Sarah, don't interrogate me though. You're so badass. My God, that was such a cool clip. The one that I saw with you, like, and the gambling, like, fuck. I'm just like, wow.
I must say, I'm leaving my
You're
I'm
interrogating
my
hat.
interrogating for the Senate. It's okay. Lem Zakharia, thanks for coming and having a chat with me today. Look, you're in an interesting space because you're often on the other side of the podcast studio wall, doing the production, getting the ideas together. I feel pretty, this is a new thing for me.
Yeah, you're acing it, by the way.
Oh, you think?
That's why I was texting you. I was like, you are doing such a good job because, like, this is a space where a lot of people, I think, in like where you work are like, oh, I don't know. Like, everybody's doing a podcast now. Everybody's doing a book. I don't want to get into it. But you're just doing such a good job with just doing it, owning it, bringing in people that you care about. And it's an intimate space that allows you to touch on topics and values that expands the dimension of what you want to say. It's awesome.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's lovely feedback. Thank you.
Low-key fan. Yeah.
I must say, I am really enjoying it.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it. And I am enjoying it for the reason that it's a different type of conversation that I can have.
Yeah.
Both with people listening and the person that I'm having the conversation with, because so often in politics you get it's the 30-second soundbite, and you're sliced up in the middle of a very oppositional debate.
Yeah. And no context.
And no context.
Yeah.
And no nuance. And I feel really I'm more and more passionate about the fact that with the system, the political system we've got at the moment that is not working for people.
No.
It's very easy just to hit the outrage button.
Yeah.
Right? And whip up anger and frustration and just go, everything's shit. And some people are doing that and saying, let's burn the place down. But of course, that's not what's going to actually solve the problems.
No, and like the communication styles have changed from what I'm seeing in politics to suit platforms. It's almost like you're preparing something to say ahead of time so that it can be cut up. So the whole messaging has changed in that way. And then you have a whole voter base that actually doesn't understand what politicians are actually offering. So that's why I think it's very smart what you did, because you're just... I know that you're not doing it with so much of that intention of just like, oh, I want to get more voters in that way. But it's giving more dimension to how you think and your values, which I think is very important. And more people should adopt that, I think, if anything. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
You've got a fascinating story, though, and background for how you even came to Australia. I mean, you're a Palestinian refugee. And you were living in Jordan. Yeah. Now, remind me, when did you come to Australia?
I came in December of 2017.
Right.
And 3 months ago, I got my citizenship, I think, 4 months ago. So
well,
I'm
congratulations.
Very happy. Thank you very much. I'm a citizen now. Yeah, I'm very excited.
Oh, that's wonderful. But you came to Australia because you weren't safe and you weren't able to live your life in Jordan.
Well, I actually wasn't very cognizant of what was happening with me. So when I came here back in 2017, I came to visit my brother on a holiday with my other younger brother, completely thinking that I'm just going to stay here for 2 weeks. And that's it. I even had my clothes packed for 2 weeks. But I was also recovering from a breakup that was a secret girlfriend that I was dating in Jordan. And so, navigating where am I going to go next, my brother was just like, look, let's think about a way for you to stay here and be safe. I was also a public figure as well. And so I was like, I can't be on stage performing and doing what I do and wanting to live my life the way that I want to. And so it's almost like I had this choice of ultimate freedom with a woman that I love in that way, or going back and having an amazing career, maybe professionally, but not really being completely myself in the way that I want to be.
Yeah.
That's kind of the choice that I had. And I am very privileged. We had the money to get a lawyer to apply for the asylum visa. I had the privilege of later on, 4 years in, changing it to a partner visa because we were too worried. Sorry, I'm fast tracking into my story as well. But my wife now had kids at the time when I got with it. They're still there. But I mean, I became a stepmom and I became so attached to them that I was like, what is this visa? Like, I can't understand whether I'm staying or not. It was so uncertain that we ended up changing it. So I am very, very privileged. I am not the typical story of what a refugee looks like, but I guess I've been speaking out more about it because not all refugees have the same stories. Not all immigrants have the same stories. And more, as you have probably experienced very much firsthand, the narrative is going towards we're just this one bulk of people that are here to take over, you know? And that's kind of the humanizing aspect of your work is what I love most, is we're not very similar, you know? So, yeah.
I think that's actually really interesting because I've met a lot of people over the years who have come to Australia and sought asylum, and they all have different stories. And, you know, there are some who have had to flee, you know, literally in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And there are others that have been able to be lucky enough to have a more planned exit.
Yes.
But still not sure what type of future they would have without permanent protection and a permanent visa. And, you know, I think about this one father I met years ago. He and his family were locked up in a detention centre on Christmas Island. And they had arrived via boat.
Wow.
And they were an Iranian family. And he had 2 daughters. And he said to me, one was 8 and one was 14. And he said to me, I've had to leave Iran. He was a professor at university.
Wow.
And
I'm getting goosebumps.
He said, I left because I want my daughters to be able to go to school. I want them to have an education, and I want them to know that they can be whoever the hell they want to be. And I will never forget.
Yeah.
And I think I'm looking at what's going on in the world. This was back in 2010. Wow. So, you know, 16 years ago. Yeah. And I'm watching what is happening in the Middle East right now, whether it's Gaza, Iran, Lebanon. And anyway, that father's voice and just absolute determination but heartbreak for safety for his girls, for his daughters. He didn't know what they wanted to do when they grew up. He didn't know what kind of life they would live, but he knew that he had to get them out of there because he was going to be targeted. He was being targeted, and he wanted them to be free.
It can be ruthless over there as well, you know? And again, like, that's exactly what you said, is like there's all these stories and all these people with all these different directions that they're going in. But I do think that, you know, I'm extremely lucky and privileged to have gotten to the state that I'm in. But for them, like the people who are in detention centers, I didn't even know that was a thing until I came here. And I'm like, how is this still happening? How are we still having people who haven't really committed any crimes or done anything that are like locked up? I know some might have. I'm being politically correct. But it's just like, how is it that this is the humane approach of taking this? Like, there's the psychological element of uncertainty, I think, that people really underestimate. And it's only when you're in a position of privilege that you will not be able to picture what it's like to not have certainty in your life. It's you know, as important as I think food and drink, it's a survival instinct to know that you're going to be safe.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, honestly, Sarah. Like, do you think that the, you know, system is going to change? Do you think that we're seeing, because there's so much of this push that's like anti-immigration, that there's actually going to be like a force in the opposite direction in a way? Or
look, I'm watching what's happening overseas as well. You know, so much of the political rhetoric that we're hearing here in Australia from politicians like Pauline Hanson, increasingly members of the coalition, and sadly, we're now seeing the Labor government, preparing to cut the migration program in various ways. It's all very reminiscent of what Trump has done in America and the debate that is happening in places like the UK.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can be naive about this and Pollyanna-ish about this. Like, I think we have to be clear-eyed about the political forces. But I do feel that Australia has an opportunity not to make the same mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? Because we can see that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, and I've talked about this already on the podcast with other guests, but I feel there's the migration debate, and we call it a debate.
I
right?
know, yeah.
Is used as a scapegoat to not talk about the real problems that are going on.
So true. So true.
People talk about grievance politics, and people who politicians like Pauline Hanson kind of feeding off people's grievances, and that kind of it suggests that the grievances are somehow not real, but that's bullshit. Right?
Yeah, they are real.
They are real.
Yeah.
People are feeling stressed.
Yeah.
Cost of living is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
The complexities of life can be so overwhelming, and we're bombarded with messages from advertisers and social media companies and influencers about how good your life could be if only you had this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
People are bombarded with this stuff.
Yeah.
And when you've got a political system that isn't working to deliver the types of assistance that people need when they really need help.
Yeah.
What do? Well, they say, well, we've got to find someone to blame.
Yeah, and I think I find what it is, like the reason why grievance politics is working, yes, it's tapping into that. There's the algorithm that's promoting it as well with the outrage, but it's just not offering solutions as well. And I'm just like sitting there going, is there anyone that's going to come up with a solution here? Like, Australia is a rich country, I come from a place where if I cast my vote, I don't know what's going to happen. It's not a system. Now I can say that I'm an Australian citizen and I'm safe. There's a lot of corruption. I know there's a lot of corruption in different areas, but I'm very proud to be part of a system that's actually where people are striving to make change and for things to be fair. Mm-hmm. And there's an element of egalitarianism in it as well in Australia that, like, I'm hoping that we're going to head there at some point. But I didn't know, this is something that I was chatting to one of your team about actually before this chat. I didn't actually understand the extent of marginalization that I might experience in Australia until after October 7th. Like, that's when really I feel like there's been a huge shift and sentiment in Australia towards Islam, and now like it's become the new, target and we're, so I just feel like we need solutions. I don't know when, or even maybe there are solutions, but we're not hearing them, and the media is just like blocking, and they're listening to a few voices and amplifying a few voices. But that's I think what really we should that's what we should really be heading towards, I think, because we're not hearing enough solutions.
And I think that's right. I think it's very, when we talk about grievance politics, I mean, it's not that the grievances aren't real, it's that the politicization of those grievances, i.e. just scoring political points, without delivering solutions, and that's what a number of these far right politicians are doing. But I think on the other hand, we've got a Labor government who, and it's not just Labor. You hear it, across the board, making excuses as to why things can't be fixed. So people are hearing two things at the same time.
Complacency and outrage.
Complacency and outrage at the same time.
Yeah.
And so therefore, and maybe it's not just that it's complacency, but a lot of these problems do take time.
Yeah.
Issues are complex. Nuance is needed.
Yeah.
And in this fast-moving media world, that's a really hard message to get across. And so people hear it is an excuse. Too hard. Yes, that's really difficult, but there's not much we can do about it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking in particular, for example, about gambling law reform, because I've been dealing
You've been doing awesome work. Sorry, I'm very excited. I've just been seeing what you're doing there. It's amazing. Yeah, they need to be held accountable enough. Like, there's a lot of people struggling. My wife works in the Ministry of Health and reads about addiction a lot, right? And what it does to people. And people actually, message and email. And yes, there's other types of drugs that she deals with. But it's such a huge problem, and I'm so glad you're speaking up about it the way that you are. My God, it's nuts. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, thank you. But I guess my frustration with that is it clearly needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
The public want it fixed.
Yeah.
But we're hearing all these excuses from the people who have the power to fix it as to why they can't. And
must be so frustrating
and so
for you.
Well,
Sorry,
that I think that's part of the problem. The system isn't working. There's no point burning it down and running away.
Yeah.
We've got to fix it. We've got to renovate it. But you can only do that if you stop making excuses for it.
Yeah, and I think that, with the whole, as you said, like the far right rhetoric and anti-immigration and all of these issues, I feel like what's happening with, and again, right and left, it's lacking nuance, actually. But let's just say people who are caring about progress and they have politics that are based on kindness and respect, right? That's what I'm kind of identifying. That group of people, they need to be, and I identify with them, we need to be fierce, much fiercer than what we are, and more outspoken, obviously without promoting violence, but we really need to have this assertiveness with our messaging. We're very we don't want to step on each other's toes, and we want to say things in a way I just think that that's why I like what you're doing, in the sense that you are being fierce. You're not just being complacent, and you're not just sitting back and watching things happen. You know what I mean? And you're also not trying to deliver your messages in a way where you're like, okay, if I'm being fierce, this is going to look like a good clip. I can see that there's elements of values there, which is why when I do watch what you do, I'm like, yeah, I resonate with that. Because I still think that, again, I'm calling it the left. The left is really divided, and there's a lot of room for us to be more outspoken. We're just in the shadows. We don't want to offend. We don't want to do anything that's going to step on each other's toes. But that means we're not speaking up, and we're being quiet about Gaza. I know it's an external issue and people don't feel like it relates to them, but it's all interconnected in the sense that it is imperialism, it is colonialism, it is affecting Australia in different ways. I don't know if you've read Regime Change. That's a new book that's out about the whole what's happening in the Trump administration. These things actually impact us culturally, and then it starts impacting the politics. And I don't know if you're going to cut any of this out because you're a politician and I'm talking very freely.
No, go for it.
But yeah, I guess I'm a bit frustrated with the silence. There's a lot of silence. There's a lot of people, and silence to me means an acceptance of the status quo, and the status quo is simply not working. No. It's just not.
No.
Yeah.
While we're on that topic, I was thinking about interesting perspectives that you may have.
Okay.
And coming in today, one of the things that I've seen online and I've heard people say is, why would a queer woman be wanting to speak out in relation to what's going on in Gaza when, if you were there, you wouldn't be safe?
Love that question. There's a lot of queer people in Gaza, guys. let's just say that, first of all. Second of all, I think you'll find actually the number one group of people that are supporting people in Palestine and what's happening with people in Palestine are people who are from oppressed minorities. You'll find that queer people and women, queer woman is the profile of the supporter of Palestinian human rights, right? And that's because when you experience oppression, then you start seeing privilege way more clearly. And so that's one thing, one element as to why so many queer people also resonate with the Palestinian cause, because you know what it's like to be dehumanized. You know what it's like to be, you know, wanting to be erased. And as a result, you want to speak louder. That's literally the, you know, the reaction to oppression. Some people hide and some people speak up. And I now have the privilege of being able to speak up in a country that allows you to do that. And I recognize that. But when it comes to the whole like Arab world and queer culture, also a lot of people don't know the history of the region, in the sense that a lot of the homophobic laws were also introduced through colonialism. People were having sex with the same sex people there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people were getting it on. Like, there's like, as far as like Al-Mutanabbi and like really old poets, even pre-Islam and through Islam, were actually getting it on. But when colonialism came in, it was basically part of civilizing us, right? Sodomy laws and things like that were introduced in Lebanon were by the French. In Jordan, it was by the British. So we really didn't have that notion. And I think that it's really unfair for people to come to the conclusion that our area and their area are exactly the same, when really I still believe that history shows that colonialism has impact, and it is postmodern colonialism in our region right now. And when you have that disruption in governance and disruption in economic prosperity and, you know, all these different things, you're not really going to be, the Maslow hierarchy of needs is about food and getting on. It's not about, can I be queer or can I exercise my freedom of speech? Because people are so concerned with the more basic things. And obviously, when they view the West as a force that has fucked up the region, for some people, that's what they view. Then the reactionary force to that becomes, well, I don't want your values. I don't want your quote unquote liberalism, or, you know, you coming and bringing on the gay to us. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's good to understand things rather than just simply judge them. I'm happy for people to judge if they actually read up and learn about the history and find out what happened in the region for it to be like that, rather than just compare and contrast as if they're coming from the same place. And then that's a very long-winded answer. No,
it's very interesting. And I guess I see those types of comments and I'm thinking, oh, come on.
Yeah.
You know, you've come to Australia. You said before that, you know, this is a country where you can be free.
Yeah, and in comparison,
yes, right? So you have a sense of privilege and generosity of your experience and where you are versus what you're seeing people debate and discuss back home, right? Yeah. How much do you feel that? And maybe you don't. So I just want, be honest with me about this. How much do you feel that your conversations are about you here as a migrant or about you here as a refugee versus you're a young woman who has an opinion regardless?
Thank you for saying young. Well, that's a very interesting one. I do consider here my home now, by the way. And growing up where I grew up, I also never felt very much like home because 70% of the Jordanian population is Palestinian. And people don't know that. But a lot of people who are there are originally from there because of the diaspora and the 1948 and 1967. So when I say that I never felt like I belonged, that is an experience I've always felt. Now, fast forwarding to Australia, look, I do get treated like, oh, you're the quota, and let's ask you questions around that, and a little bit of Orientalism, if you've heard that term from Edward Said. I do feel that. But honestly, you can talk to different Arabs and we have different perspectives. My perspective is that's not the worst thing in the world, really. It's a place where people want to learn things and they want to ask questions. And I'm a bit of a pragmatist in that way. I'm just like, very happy for me to answer your questions if it's coming from a place of curiosity. Even if you're boxing me in your head, I don't care, frankly. If it means that you're going to be a little bit more educated about where I'm from, or I can present the region in a way that's a little bit different from the stereotypes that you have in your head, I don't care about the method if that's the means.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's kind of my approach. But yeah.
So you've been working in this new media space.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're a producer for Abbie Chatfield.
Yes.
For some time. How did that come about?
Like, how did I get into production?
Yeah.
You mean?
And were you doing that back in Jordan, or
Very good question.
Or is that something that's come about as coming to Australia?
Okay, so I have a very eclectic background, but anyway, we're not going to have a lot of time. We have like 10 minutes left, so I'll be very quick. I'll be quick, Karina. Basically, I studied psychology. I got into music. In Jordan, I was a radio presenter, but also a musician. My music started taking off, so I started being more of a full-time musician. That's when I started seeing like the whole public and me wanting to be private and that whole tension. And it affected me psychologically a lot, I have to say. Like wanting to be truthful and myself with people on stage and live, but also struggling because I'm doing all these things in secret, and it felt like a double life, right? When I came to Australia, it was back to zero, like absolutely back to zero. I was managing a radio station. I was thriving. And it was just like the visa that I was on as well freaked employers out. Like it was they didn't know, like it didn't have an end date. It was a weird visa. So I just started in hospitality first. Props to anybody in hospitality. Such incredible people.
We couldn't survive without you.
Yeah. And then after that, Mamma Mia gave me a chance. So Mamma Mia, the podcasting network, and then I went to Nova in podcasting, and then to SCA, basically followed Abbie from SCA, from what's it called, Nova to SCA. And then as I was in podcasting, and this is something I talk a little bit about in my socials, I don't think the podcasting industry did really well monetizing this platform with how young audiences are going, in my view. And it's also, media here is a little bit of a monopoly, right? You don't have a lot of different voices in that landscape when it comes to companies. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I decided to open up my own company in talent representation because I was seeing that, well, actually, this is much more along the lines of what I'm good at in terms of psychology background, and then also like being talent myself. So I understand people. So I basically got into talent management after podcasting. That's kind of
that's the journey.
That's the journey.
I guess I wanted to ask you about your experience working on Abbie's podcast, because of course, you know, I see the shit she has to put up with.
Oh my God! Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I must say, I mean, it's very reminiscent of a lot of the sexist, misogynistic bullshit that has been directed at me over the years.
Wow.
You know, particularly when I was a younger member of the parliament.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to understand what experiencing that up close means for you. I mean, it's not just, obviously it's directed at Abbie on a very personal level.
Yeah.
But when you're working part of a team, it's at the team.
Yeah, very true. I mean, the thing about podcasting as well is you are talking to your audience, so it's great. That part, you have this base and they're responding to you, but obviously socials is where it gets messy because you can tap into these algorithms that are just bringing in people that feel really emboldened to say things that are criminal, honestly. I mean, you probably would have experienced that. So how it looks up close is very similar to how you see Abbie on her socials sometimes, is it can get to her sometimes, you know? Like, it's a very vicious cycle of trolls coming in sometimes. And you know, it's also something that it gets that feeling of security that you have is a privilege, and so it also messes a bit with that. Is you start feeling a sense of fear, I think. But where it comes to for me is, again, it's not just about her being a woman. It's about her being a woman who speaks her mind, who's loud, who's fierce, and that's what some of these men, they don't want to see that. They just want to see her being put in her place. They don't want to see a woman try to take power and take agency and move through the world as if she's a man. That threatens this kind of power from them. And then, yeah, you start getting these disgusting comments and barrage of emails and messages. And yeah, I think for me, I have a boy as well. I have a 14-year-old with my wife. And I just see the world that he's in. I guess working with Abbie has made me see how I want to bring up my boy in a way, you know?
Well, you've said quite a bit over the past in relation to the manosphere and the impact that has had and is having. So you must be thinking about that not just as somebody who's engaged on these social media platforms with this new media environment, but okay, as a stepmom.
Yeah.
Wanting to understand how to protect your boy.
Yeah.
As well as embolden him to be the best he can be.
Well, the whole manosphere stuff is really scary, isn't it? Like, I see it firsthand in terms of even, living with two mums in an area where, it's not going to, you just wouldn't think that it would have that rhetoric around. And then you have social media, and we have had conversations where it's come up that I could see that he's engaging with content that is promoting certain ideas, right? And I guess for me, I see it as I've been, patriarchy exists everywhere, right? So where I grew up, it's, I would say, way more visible and way more in effect than it is in Australia. And that's something actually on the Twice Displaced podcast that I tried to explore, and knew that I was going to get, Arab women especially being angry with me about, like, why did you talk about the fact that you were assaulted 7 times in Jordan? Why do you want to bring attention to the shit parts of our culture? We're already being seen in a shit way. Why do you want to do that again? But for me, it's more about, like, I wanted to give a very clear, realistic picture of what's happening. But what I'm trying to say is, I've seen how patriarchy can exist in different cultures and societies. And what I can see happening in Australia is that, yes, for sure, women have a lot of freedoms and a lot of privileges. But I see that there's this, again, resistance to women taking more power. And that's why it's very much directed towards young men, because they're scared. What is the world going to look like full of these crazy feminists, By feminists, I mean just people who want equal rights, really. Yes, some of them are angry. And I think that where the nuance lies is, and I don't know if I'm going to, let's see if that makes it to the final cut. But I see some women exercising feminism in a way that is alienating men. And we do need men to be part of this conversation, because they are also agents of change. And that's how I'm trying to get my boy across, is like, you also need to understand, I need to empathize with you, that when you go into this world, I can see how other people are looking at you as a 14-year-old boy, that you're about to wreck stuff, and that you just have evil intentions, or you can be harmful. You're much more likely to be seen than a 14-year-old girl, like comparatively. So I see the psychological weight of what men are carrying. So we have to acknowledge that. We can't dismiss that. But at the same time, some of them are making it a really bad time for other men. You know what I mean? Like, some men are ruining men's reputation in the way that they're behaving, unfortunately. And so you see those elements, and you also see that a lot of women are reacting to the oppression that they are facing, and that there's a lot of unhealed trauma from what men have done to them that they are trying to somehow process online, and in a way where it can sound dismissive towards men, it can sound derogatory, it can sound whatever, quote unquote, anti-men. So I just think that if we want to make progress in this area, we need to involve men. We need to involve young men specifically and really educate them about, have empathy towards them. Like, empathy is really important. And also point out what is the toxic behavior here that we don't want to see in our society, because there's a lot of it,
And that it's and that it's not just toxic behavior that hurts women, but it's actually
100%.
holding men back from being the best men they can be.
100%. And I think the psychology of the man, is what I see, is that they lack empathy towards themselves. And people lack empathy towards them because a lot of them have perpetrated violence. So then they're moving through life with that sense of disconnect from themselves. Then they also do not necessarily have the emotional processing power that women have, not because they're not capable of, but because we're enculturated differently as women to be in touch more with our emotions. So when you have all of these factors coming in, then they're just going to, they're just more likely to dysregulate. They're more likely to attack. They're more likely to avoid, to blame. And you can see that this problem starts getting like bigger and bigger with that type of psychology. So I do think empathy is a place to start. Not necessarily excusing men's behavior at all is not what I'm saying. But I think that women have to start thinking about how do we, what's going on with them at least. But
yeah, I think it's actually really interesting to have that conversation and to be able to have a safe, rational conversation about that. And I've often felt that we are not going to be able to shift the dial on domestic violence, sexual assault, that overwhelmingly is directed at women by men, without having decent men, of which most of them are, to be able to stand up, not just call it out, but to say, hey, stop giving the rest of us a bad name here. What do we need in order to ensure that we are not behaving like this?
Yes, and it goes
What do we need to make sure that this is not, it's not a divide and conquer. It is actually, as you say, an empathy and uniting.
Yeah, because you have to connect with a person to have any sort of behavioral change, right? Like that, nothing will change without that connection.
Well, and we're not going to be able to stop those terrible, terrible figures of domestic violence and assault towards women unless men change their behaviour.
Yeah, 100%. And they need to listen, and for them to listen, they need to feel heard. So there's that kind of like dynamic. But here's, I think, what's also interesting as well is because you have the violence against women, that's, the criminal part, the part that you can see very clearly. Then you have another issue that's also propagating in society with men, which is the whole mental load conversation, right? Which is the whole of like, so many of my friends have these just like men who just like sit there and do nothing when it comes to childcare, or it's frustrating how much of the load that women are carrying in their everyday lives. And so there's also that frustration, and that's where sometimes you can have, women kind of have enough and kind of say, well, all men are like that, and then put them in a bucket because they're frustrated in their day-to-day life with how men are, a lot of men, and that's why I'm going to say most men, not like only some men are like perpetrators of violence, but most men have not yet gotten the capability of sharing the load within a household with women equally. And that's actually very frustrating for women because economically it's also setting us back because we're the ones who have to think about when the bed sheets need to be changed and when the kid has to go to soccer practice and show up to the soccer practice. And all of this stuff is actually affecting us.
I think this conversation about empathy is actually vital to all of the topics we've touched on today, actually, Lem, because whether it's understanding why people have fled and are fleeing countries, their homelands, what happens when they get here, how they fit into that, how you fit into that, how we, manage our domestic lives, how we deal with those big cultural issues of difference and inequality and division. And I just feel like this is why, new media is such an interesting medium to talk about these types of things, because we have to make a choice. Do we just segregate all of these things and push the outrage button, or do we use this new medium to actually find ways to actually understand where people are coming from? Hit that empathy button and open it up.
Love empathy. Empathy forever.